Welcome and thank you for watching my videos. In this one I'm sharing with you a way of overcoming hip impingement where the ball or the head of the femur is not sitting or articulating properly with the hemipelvis with the socket, and this leads to a limited range of motion in the hip in all planes of motion. Muscles getting too tight to protect the joint, and the knees and the lower back are suffering because of dysfunctional hips. You have a clicking, popping, hard end to flexion and extension, and whatever stretches you do, you can never fix it. The results are always temporary. The first stretch is the pigeon stretch. This is an easier version because I'm quite tight in the posterior hip capsule, so that's the goal with these exercises. One of the goals is to release the posterior hip capsule so the ball of the femur can sit nicely into the socket, gliding posteriorly, because with the hip impingement the femur glides anteriorly and it's out of the socket. Hold the stretch for 30 plus seconds and change the direction in which you are attacking the posterior hip capsule. The stretch is felt around the hip joint. In the second stretch, this is a crossover stretch, releasing not just the IT band, but you're releasing the posterior outer portion of the leg, which is the IT band, the hamstrings, the long and the short head, and also the peroneal muscles or fibularis. Hold it for 30 plus seconds. The range of motion with this stretch comes from the thoracic spine and the hip joint itself, not from the lumbar spine, so you would require a good core engagement to keep the ribs down and in and to stabilize the lumbar spine. Do both sides, of course. In the third stretch, we are lengthening the inner thighs, the short adductors. This is the frog stretch. First, I lengthen these adductors in flexion, so I flex my hips and I abduct my legs, holding the spine in neutral position with all the stretches. I forgot to say that, but all the stretches, very important to hold the spine in neutral position. Feet and knees are aligned, knees as far apart as possible, hips are flexed, abdominals are engaged, and I continuously try to engage my gluteus maximus and medius with all those stretches, and then I go into flexion. You can't see much difference, but now, into extension, but now I am into hip extension and abduction, stretching the inner, the short adductors, the inner thigh muscles. And after this stretch, the third one, I go into a squat position, sumo squat position, not a deadlift but a squat, hips much lower than the knees. My goal is to keep a neutral spinal alignment, and because I go into posterior pelvic tilt, I try to tilt my pelvis anteriorly without over recruiting my spinal extensors. So you need a thoracic extension, you need a neutral spine, you need the knees and feet must be aligned. Do not let your knees cave in. Hold it for 30 plus seconds. Again, we're improving the articulation between the femur and the hemipelvises, continuously engaging the gluteus maximus and medius to have the ball of the femur sit better and better into the socket, and you'll feel the difference going deeper and deeper, and the squat feels easier. And we're finishing this set of corrective exercises with a corrective front rock bottom squat. You got to held again a perfect spinal alignment. Keep your elbows high. You have an upward rotation of the shoulder blades, and you go to the bottom of the squat. You hold it for 1 second, and you recruit the gluteal muscles, not allowing the knees to fall in. The knees must be out. My gluteus maximus and medius, all hip muscles, are engaged from the very bottom of the squat, and I consciously have turned them into my primal movers. Of course, your quadriceps are working. At the bottom of the squat, I go into a posterior tilt a little, and at the top of the squat, anterior tilt. This is because of this hip impingement. With each set, I repeat the stretches. My range of motion gets better and better. The squat gets better and better, and by the end, I feel terrific.